Okay, so thank you, those of you who joined us last week, and you're back again this week. And yeah, lovely to meet you all over Zoom from the other side of the world for those who are new. So for those who didn't come on last week, yeah, my name's Laura Hancock, and yeah, I'm from Oxfordshire originally, but I'm now a resident over here in New Zealand. I live on a small sheep and beef farm in Central Hawke's Bay. My partner is a farmer and a shearer, his family farm, and then 3/4 time shearing. And I'm a movement mechanics and performance coach. And I specialize in working with people in rural industries, so shearers, farmers, equestrian athletes, anybody really out there in our rural communities, and helping people understand the demands of their industry in terms of their movement patterns and how they can look after their body, use self-treatment methods and also movement enhancement exercises to help improve your performance, which is going to improve productivity, and also manage your risk of injury to help the longevity of your career. So last week we did a lot of theory, and I talked a lot about the fact that in my view, anybody who works within our primary industries should be classified as a rural athlete, because you're paid to use your body and your mind on a daily basis. So effectively, you're paid to perform using the tools of your trade. So I would classify the most used and most valuable tools of your trade as a farmer to be your mind and your body. And if we look at athletes, the classification simplistically is that they're paid to use their body and their mind on a daily basis. So to me, farmers are rural athletes, and we need to start changing the way that we think and how we approach this to be able to support people's performance, productivity, and sustainability. So last week, we had a nice long message from John. I don't know if John's on tonight, but he wrote a lovely message at the end of the webinar saying how fantastic it would be to be including this type of information in the education system for people who are looking to go into our primary industries. And I didn't manage to get back to John at the time to say that over in New Zealand, that is what we are starting to do now, which is really exciting. So I also work with my other company called WOMO Life. And WO stands for work and MO stands for move. So we want you to work wise and move wise for a longer, more sustainable career and life. So it is starting to get to the point over in New Zealand that we are able to be including movement, nutrition, mental health literacy, and also financial literacy in our education for people entering into primary industries, which is really exciting because, I'm pretty passionate that it should be part of everybody's education and day-to-day life. So today I'll be taking you through some theory about breathing and how it can affect your performance. And then we'll be doing some movement snacks on that. We'll then look at another movement snack, which is one of my absolute favorites for anybody in any of our industries. And then we'll talk a little bit about posture and how that can affect your performance. And then we'll do a couple of posture hacks for that as well. So part theory, but also lots of practical today. So the first thing I'd like to ask you to do is just make sure that you've got your dining room table chair or a hard chair nearby, because we will use that for a couple of the exercises. And also, if you've got your towel with you, Callum showed you his rolled up into a log. So if you can kind of roll your towel up into a log so that it's next to you and ready to be able to do the exercise later on. So we looked last week a little bit about, where our genetics and our DNA comes from and how that affects us in our modern life. Because the genes that govern our bodies today evolved hundreds of years ago. So this was when we were in constant motion. We were foraging or hunting or chasing animals, across the plains for hours on end. Then we would eat, we would rest, sleep, recover, relax, and repeat. But we were discussing that today, of course, our lifestyle has changed. And we're not necessarily as active and have as much variation as we did before, and we might have quite repetitive and loading jobs or a high level of stress. But the thing is that our genes and our bodies and our brains are still encoded for the lifestyle which our ancestors lived. So it's really important that we look at using movement and exercise in our daily lives, because that can help us to maintain that delicate biological balance and optimal condition and function of the brain that has been fine-tuned over millions of years. So if you didn't join us last week, all my discussion around that is, as Callum said, that will be on that YouTube video, so you can catch up on that. But not only do movement practices help us to maintain the function of our brain, they also help you to maintain your mobility and maintain those good movement patterns to keep you moving well. So movement can have a really positive effect upon both body and mind. So we can see that there's a really strong link between psychology and physiology, so mind and body. And we all know that in tense or pressured or stressful situations, psychology causes the body to physically become quite tense or to tighten up. And this leads to the inability to move as you normally would. And at this stage, the nervous system starts to fire on its sympathetic nervous system. So what this means is it's in its fight-flight response. So lots of people have heard about fight-flight, but on technical terms, that's your sympathetic nervous system. So, and that responds for us when we're in that tense, pressured, and stressful situation. But if we use good breathing practices, it can help us to activate our parasympathetic nervous system. So this is more commonly known as our rest-digest response. So what we're basically saying is that breathing exercises can help us to have a positive impact upon both our psychology and our physiology. So they can have a calming effect upon both your body and your mind at the same time. So it's kind of like you get double bang for your buck by using these breathing exercises, because it can help our body, but it also helps our mind at the same time. So breathing's a funny thing, because it's probably, it seems like the most simple thing, it just happens automatically, but it's also a really complex thing as well. It is something that can be conscious, so we can control it if we choose to. But when we stop thinking about it, it continues on its own. So breathing can become suboptimal. So what this means is that, through years of dysfunctional posture or repetitive movement patterns, we might not be breathing to our most optimal level, as we did when we were children. And this can actually occur for many reasons. So it can occur because of psychological reasons. So things like anxiety or stress, panic, suppressed emotions, and conditioning and learned responses, and maybe even, a history of abuse or suffering from pain. And those factors, those psychological factors, can change the way that we breathe. And then also biochemical factors. So biochemical is things like drugs or caffeine or alcohol, opiates, and also things like heat and humidity, and altitude and allergies are going to be biochemical factors that are going to potentially change the way you breathe. And then, of course, we've also got biomechanical. So this is postural adaptations that might change how we posturally sort of sit or move or stand, that can change the way we breathe. Even wearing like tight-waisted clothing can change the way we're breathing. And overuse or misuse or abuse of your musculoskeletal system, and repetitive postural positions. That might be an occupational thing, but those biomechanical positionings mean that if we're not in a good biomechanical posture, then instead of the breath being directed right into the sides and the back of the rib cage, as it is designed to do, it comes into the upper chest. So as that breath comes into the upper chest, rather than the ribs and the back of the rib cage, mouth breathing begins to occur. So we want to have good nasal breath for optimal breathing and optimal breathing biomechanics. But through posture or through psychological reasons or through biochemical reasons, mouth breathing can start to occur. So you're breathing in through your mouth. And this can change things on very many levels that are going to mean that our breathing then becomes suboptimal. And then it can have those changes to both our psychology and our physiology. But of course, breathing as well can be affected because it then becomes habit. And then that's something that just becomes ingrained into our, habitual daily patterns. So we want to try to avoid these suboptimal breathing patterns developing. And we want to try to help reverse suboptimal breathing patterns if that is something that is happening with you in your daily life. So it's really important that as part of our daily routines, we start to pay attention to our breathing, because that's a really vital part in our effort to be moving well. So, we've said that breathing exercises can have a powerful effect upon your psychology and your physiology. And what we're talking about there is this range, this multitude of positive effects. So correct breathing technique can help support your relaxation because, as we said, it's kicking into that rest digest response. So that parasympathetic nervous system. So when we're talking about trying to really maximize our mental health and reduce our stress levels, breathing practices, then they're really known sort of worldwide now to have such a positive effect on our mental health, and trying to get into that positive set of mindfulness even, and trying to reduce that stress response. Good breathing practices can also help us to mobilize the muscles of the upper back and the rib cage. And these are areas which might hold stress and tension. So breathing exercises help to reduce that stress and tension on that psychological level as well as on the physiological level. So believe it or not, breathing exercises can also help you improve your core stabilization. So that's something we're going to discuss in a minute. It can also help you improve your posture. So good breathing helps posture, but also vice versa. Good posture is going to help your breathing. And of course, breathing can help you improve your performance because you're going to have more efficient respiration. You're going to increase your oxygen availability, and it's also stimulating positive chemical responses within your body. So the power of breathing is actually phenomenal on so many levels. But as we said, it's something that we just do subconsciously. But if we can start to make some conscious efforts on how do we breathe and what's the best way to be breathing, then we have this multitude of positive benefits that we can start to help ourselves to bring into our lives. So if we look at breathing and how it occurs, the diaphragm is the main muscle which we use to initiate the breathing process. So it's attached to the spine, to the ribs, and to the breastbone, which you can see in this picture on the screen. So good diaphragmatic breathing means that we're using our diaphragm efficiently. So when that happens, that diaphragm is providing a connection that transmits forces efficiently throughout the entire body. So as we breathe in, the dome-shaped diaphragm muscle contracts, and this means it actually drops down. So as it contracts, it drops down into the abdomen, and air can enter in through the lungs and fill those lungs up. So as we breathe in, we should see the belly rise because the diaphragm contracts and it compresses that abdominal space, therefore raising the belly. And the lower ribs should expand outwards to the sides and to the back of the body. So this should be a 360-degree breath. And this in itself is why the diaphragm plays a key role in core stabilization, because efficient diaphragmatic breathing creates intra-abdominal pressure as the diaphragm compresses the abdominal space, which aids core stability. So good breathing can affect your core stability. And when we really think about that, we know that because you know, a lot of power lifters use breath. We hear them use breath. But we're not all power lifters, but we are using, you know, load, and we have to lift, push, and carry and pull on a daily basis. So knowing that we're breathing well gives us some knowledge that we're hopefully going to be able to improve our core stability and just on a functional level every day when we're at work. So not only does diaphragmatic breathing help with core stabilization, it's also a key tool to help improve our movement. So last week, we discussed that if our body is seen as a chain, then poor movement patterns can be seen as weak links. And the really exciting thing, as I've just said, is that breathing impacts movement. So as a movement coach, when I discover weak links with people I'm working with, I can then prescribe breathing exercises. And it's really, really common to see improvements in the weak link immediately after performing breathing exercises. And research has shown that it's approximately about 70% of people that will see improvement in their movement straight after performing breathing exercises. So when you think about it in that way, it's such a simple but yet so powerful way to be able to help you start that journey of improving your movement. So as we covered last week, a weak link is going to determine the strength and the durability of the chain. So if we can improve the weak link, improving movement just through breathing exercises, this means we can improve the strength and the durability of your chain, your body, by incorporating breathing exercises into your daily routines. So this is going to be our first movement snack that we're going to be going into in a second. And movement snacks is something we learned about last week. So they're bite-sized amounts of movement exercises, which you can do throughout your working day. So they're designed to help you enhance your own individual movement patterns, so helping you to enhance the function of the tool of your trade. And it has been shown that little and often can be the most effective way of making quick and long-lasting changes. And breathing exercises are therefore, of course, such a great movement snack to incorporate into your day. So we'll have a look at how we can actually start to do this. So as Callum said before, I can't see you all, so I'm just hoping that you're going to be joining in with these slides as I talk you through how to do your movement exercises. It's hard for me teaching you through movement exercises, not being able to see you, but I think being on the other end, it's actually quite nice because nobody can see you doing it. You can lie down in your sitting room and have a go at these exercises with us. So I'm going to ask you to be lying down on the floor and have that chair with you that we talked about. So we're going to be beginning in 90-90 position. You can see this in the pictures on screen. So you're going to position yourself face up, lying on your back, and your calves will be on that chair. So you want the knees and the hips both bent to 90 degrees. In the picture at the top here, you can see that Luke is lying with his legs on the sofa. So to create that 90-degree position, he's just put a little cushion underneath his knees so that he's in a nice, relaxed 90-degree position with his knees and his legs whilst his back's on the floor. So you want your neck and spine natural and comfortable. So if you want to place a pillow underneath your head, you can absolutely do that as well. And then what we're going to be doing is taking our hands and placing one hand onto your chest, your upper chest, spread like a starfish, and take the other hand and spread it like a starfish on your belly. So your little finger will be down by your pubic bone and your thumb will be up by the base of your ribs. You want to soften your shoulders, soften your neck, and have those two hands, one on your chest and one on your abdomen. Now, if you close your eyes, it will be easier for you to focus on the feeling of your breath coming in and out of your body. So closing your eyes for me, I just want you to breathe in and breathe out and feel where that breath is coming into your body. We want to breathe in through your nose and pause, and then breathe out through your nose. So we want to see where that breath is coming into our body. Is it coming into the hand that's on our belly first, or is it coming into the hand that is on our chest first? And which is rising higher? So just make that observation. What should be happening is that as the breath comes into our body, our belly rises first, and then we might have a little bit of chest rise afterwards. The belly should definitely be rising first. So this is our belly breath that we're looking at. So if we want to try to improve this, I want you to really focus on that breath coming in through the nose and out through the nose. You'll imagine that there's a balloon attached to the bottom of your diaphragm. So just beneath your rib cage, in your belly, you've got a balloon based in those lungs. And imagine you're drawing in your breath down into your belly, trying to blow that balloon up inside your belly with your in-breath. And as you breathe out, gently let that balloon deflate and go back to its original size. Breathing in through your nose, blow up that balloon. And breathing out through your nose, let that balloon deflate. So if we're focusing on belly breath, the hand on the belly should be naturally rising first, and then the hand on the chest rising gently afterwards. And we want to focus on directing the breath down into the belly for that optimal diaphragmatic breathing. So if you continue with this breath for me, if you find that your breath is coming primarily into your chest with little belly movement, or it's coming into your chest before your belly, that's absolutely okay. As we said about before, this is often the case with modern life. So often you see people that their breath doesn't quite come into their belly first. It comes into their chest first, or their belly doesn't rise more. But this is why we want to do these movement exercises, to help you reset your breathing patterns to be more optimal. So I'm going to ask you to do 2 more breaths, breathing in through your nose, taking that breath down into the belly, blowing up that balloon, and then letting that balloon deflate. So when we're doing this movement snack at home, you want to be doing 10 to 20 full breaths. Staying where you are, we're going to progress this exercise now. So we've said before that the goal of diaphragmatic breath is actually to have that 360-degree breath. So the exercise you've just done is your belly breathing. But we want to now try to aim for 360-degree breath. So try to get that full cylinder of the rib cage expanding. So once we know we can belly breathe, so hopefully that last exercise, we've got that breath coming down into the belly and the belly rising. We also need to focus on laterally expanding that rib cage. So you're now going to take your hands from your chest and your belly and take them and wrap them around the side of the rib cage, like in the photos. So your thumbs will be at the back of your body, back of your rib cage, and your fingers will be spread right around the outside of your rib cage. We're going to continue that breath, breathing in through the nose, breathing down into the base of your lungs. And we want to try to breathe out into the hands that are on your side of your body as well. So as you breathe deeply in, you want to imagine that you've got a giant elastic band all the way around the lower part of your rib cage. And as you breathe in, you stretch every single part of that elastic band equally, bringing the breath into every aspect of your rib cage. So breathing into a 360-degree breath. So you should feel that your ribs are coming into your fingers and coming into the back of your thumb. So as you breathe in through your nose, you'll feel your belly rise, and then you'll breathe out into the sides and the back of the rib cage. So if we're doing this exercise at home, again, we'd want to do 10 to 20 breaths. So we'll just do 2 more, breathing in through the nose, drawing that breath down into the belly and out into the outsides and the back of the rib cage. And then gently letting the air come out of the body. Opening your eyes for me. And we're going to bring yourself up now gently onto your seat. So we'll come up onto that seated position on your chair. And we're going to move through into another exercise in a second. But I want you to bring yourself seated onto your chair, feet flat on the floor. So you may need to shuffle forwards on your chair to enable that. And imagine that you've got a string on the top of your head, pulling you nice and tall to the ceiling. Okay, and now you can take your hands to the side of your rib cage and see if we can also practice that 360-degree breath when we're sitting up. So we want to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. Really thinking about that breath coming right into those ribs, expanding all the way around the body. Now, one of the times that I find this exercise nicest to do is when I'm sitting and driving in the car. So if you now shuffle yourself back on your chair, and you should have your backrest of your chair behind you, staying nice and tall, but just shuffling yourself back. You don't have to have your hands there, but the back of the chair is something that you can have for feedback. So as you breathe in through your nose and you're expanding into the sides and the back of your rib cage, you should be able to feel that the back of your ribs are expanding into the back of the chair. So it's just a little bit of feedback there for you. The 90-90 breathing exercises on the ground are something I love to do every day, particularly when you're in a bit of a stressful environment and you want to calm yourself down and release that tension and go into that parasympathetic. But it's also just such a fantastic exercise to do when you're driving. If you're sat at the traffic lights, it's a really good reminder for you to just sit and do 10 to 20 breathing exercises using the back of the chair as your feedback. So staying on your chair, as we've just said, it's really important to be able to breathe well when we're seated as well as when we're lying. But, we need to be able to breathe well in all different positions and different postures. And interestingly enough, just because you can breathe well in one position doesn't mean you breathe well in other positions. Your posture may be different in different positions. So we need to practice our breathing in all areas of our life and in many different positions. So I'm going to teach you the box breathing technique. This is one that's used a lot in sort of mindfulness practices or relaxation practices. And it helps you focus on your breathing and helps you activate those positive benefits of your good breathing techniques. So making sure that you're sitting with good posture, that string pulling yourself towards the ceiling, your feet flat on the floor. You're still going to be focusing on that 360-degree breath, but you're now going to breathe in through your nose, breathing in through your nose for 3 seconds. Then you're going to pause for 3 seconds, keeping your lungs full. Breathe out through your nose for 3 seconds. Then pause, keeping your lungs empty for 3 seconds. And continue this for me. So in for 3, pause for 3, out for 3, and pause for 3. So some people might find this a challenge to begin with. You might find that 3 seconds hold is not something that you can do very easily. So some people may start with 3 seconds in, 1 second hold, 3 seconds out, 1 second hold. And then you can build that up. We want to aim for the 3 in, 3 hold with the lungs full, 3 seconds out, 3 seconds hold with the lungs empty. And over time, you'll get so good at that that you might then be able to do 4 seconds with your box or 5 seconds with your box. But knowing that we're working on that 360-degree breath. So again, I hope that you're carrying on with the box breathing whilst I'm chatting away to you about, all the fun parts of breathing. But in order to stimulate optimal breathing patterns, the more we repeat the process, the more skilled your body gets at returning to utilizing that optimal diaphragmatic breath. And over time, this breath method should become much more automatic, like it used to be before, modern life got in the way for many of us. And it's such a good movement snack to be incorporating into your day, this box breathing, because of course you can do it pretty much anywhere and anytime and in any situation. So those are those 3 breathing exercises. The first 2, the 90-90 belly breathing followed by lateral expansion. Brilliant one to be doing when you're lying in bed in the morning and lying in bed before you go to sleep. 360-degree breath when you're driving in the car, and using that box breath technique is also such a good time to remind yourself to be doing these exercises. Okay, so I'll do a little bit more theory now. So if you want to make yourself a little bit more comfortable, stay on your dining room table chair, that's fine. So we've talked quite a lot in last week's session, but it really is important to be looking at integrating movement practices into our everyday lives, which are going to help maintain our mobility and also help us to enhance our natural basic movement patterns. Because moving well is going to help ensure that we have the ability to move well enough so that we can practically perform as rural athletes. So to me, making sure that you're moving well is the first step of the pathway to improving your performance, your productivity, and the longevity of your career, as I said at the beginning. And in almost every movement we do, there's room for improvement. If you're an expert at a certain movement, the room for improvement might be small. But if you're new to a movement or new to doing a movement correctly, then there's a lot of room for improvement. But movement is such a great thing to be focusing on during your everyday. And that breathing snack is such a great start. It's really simple, it's really easy, and it's not hard to incorporate. But let's look at doing a bit more of a physical movement snack to help you enhance your movement now. So a little bit of toe touching, going, ooh, I've done some slidey things with my slides. Sorry about that. Back to where we started. Everybody can remember when they could touch their toes. Some people still can touch their toes, but for most of us, it's not as easy as it used to be when we were children. However, it is a natural basic movement that we all did have the capacity for when we were children, before modern life got in the way of us maintaining our ability to move well. So before I give you any instructions for the next movement snack, just make sure that if you have an injury that means you shouldn't be exercising, please just watch these next movement snacks and don't join in. If you have an injury that you shouldn't be moving with, if you've got significant back pain and you've been going and getting support from your healthcare professional, follow their advice and their guidelines. And of course, just be careful when doing all of these movement snacks, because I can't see what you're doing. So listen to your body and know your own boundaries as an individual. So I'm going to ask you to do a simple movement test in a second, but I just please want you to ask you to just simply acknowledge your natural range of motion. That's all I want you to do. So there's no right and wrong, good or bad. What we're looking for is, where is your starting point? So where is your baseline before we start doing the movement snack? I don't want you to push yourself deeper into this. I want you to keep it simple. Just acknowledge your natural range and feel how easy or feel how restricted and stiff the movement feels to do this first time around. So the movement test is this toe touch. So I'm going to ask you to stand yourselves up for me, please. Feet together, toes touching, heels touching. And you're just simply going to bend down and do a toe touch test. So see how far do you go down and how easy is it to go down there? What does it feel like and how far do you go? And then you can stand yourself back up and you're just going to remember this range of motion for me. Okay, so you can stay standing, hopefully. I'll do a little bit of chatting away and then we'll do the movement snack. So it's not just general day-to-day, office workers or those of us who sit in the tractor all day long or things like that, that causes you not to be able to touch your toes. Many athletes can't even touch their toes, actually, which it seems like a little bit crazy, but it's actually quite true. And most people would automatically assume that they can't touch their toes because of poor tissue quality or muscle length. But the reason that many people can't touch their toes has nothing to do with the flexibility of their hamstrings, but much more to do with their movement quality. So they are often not performing the natural, efficient, and effective sequencing of movement as they go down towards the ground to try to touch their toes. So what we're going to look at now is how we can use a movement snack as a movement enhancement exercises for touching your toes and to help you return more natural and efficient movement sequencing to the tool of your trade, so that you can then utilize it better, more efficiently, and more safely during your working day. And we can change movement a lot quicker than you actually think. So one thing that movement snacks are not, is static stretches. So there's no massage, no static stretching involved at all. They're simple movement exercises which help your nervous system to become more efficient in movement patterns. So this is the movement snack that we're going to be doing in a second. I'm going to show you this video and talk you through it so you can see what we're going to be doing. And then I'll get you to join in and I'll talk you all through it. Okay. So the setup is that you're having your feet together, toes and heels touching, as we just did. Open your knees out a little bit, pop that towel, that rolled up towel between your knees, and then close your knees so you're holding onto that towel. So you don't want to change your feet position when you're putting the towel in. Keep those feet together. And you want to make sure that your knees aren't locked backwards or hyperextended when you're holding that towel. So it needs to be nice and round when it's rolled up. So we're going to start by reaching towards the ceiling with your fingers, stretching the arms as high as possible with the palms facing forward. And then you're going to drop your chin to your chest, take your gaze to the floor, weight drops backwards through your pelvis as you aim towards a toe touch. Now you can see his fingers didn't touch his toes to begin with. So if the fingers don't make it completely to the toes, you draw your abdomen in and you squeeze the towel roll. If you still don't reach the floor, you then bend your knees to touch your toes. Breathing in as you come back up to the top position. So you're keeping your heels on the ground. And you want to touch your toes every single time. So your fingers go back up towards the ceiling. Chin down, gaze down, breathe out, roll down, weight back through your pelvis. If you can't touch your toes, breathe out, squeeze your towel, draw your belly in. If you still can't reach your toes, bend your knees, and then we come back up to that start position. Okay, so should we all have a go at that toe touch progression? So this is my favorite of all of my movement snacks, which is why I'm sharing it with you today. So if you grab your towel roll for me, stand yourself up. So a bit of space around you, and you're going to put your feet together, heels and toes touching. Open those knees and slide that towel between your knees, nice and rolled up. And then hold onto that towel with your knees still keeping those feet together. So you're going to take your arms up to the ceiling, fingers pointing as far to the ceiling as possible. And you're going to breathe out, chin down, gaze down towards the floor. Let your weight sink back through your pelvis as you roll down towards the floor to try to touch your toes. If you can't touch your toes, breathe out, squeeze that towel, draw the belly in. If you still don't touch your toes, bend your knees and then touch your toes, your fingers to your toes. Breathe in, raise back up to that start position. Okay, so breathing out, chin down, gaze down, weight back through your pelvis, rolling down towards your toes. If you don't touch them, squeeze the towel, draw the belly in, and then if needs be, bend the knees to touch your toes. We want to touch your toes every time. Fingers back up towards the ceiling, nice and tall. Chin down, gaze down, breathe out. Weight back through your pelvis, rolling yourself down towards the floor. If needs be, squeeze the towel, bend the knees, and touch the toes. 3 more. Fingers up to the ceiling. Gaze down, chin down, breathe out, roll down. Weight goes backwards through the pelvis. Keep your feet flat. Squeeze the towel, bend the knees, touch your toes, and back up to the top. Gaze down, chin down, breathe out. Weight back, roll down. Squeeze the knees. Bend the knees, touch the toes, back up to the start position. Last one. Fingers to the ceiling, gaze down, chin down, breathe out, roll down, weight back through the pelvis. If you're still not touching the floor, squeeze the knees, draw the belly in, and then bend those knees to touch the toes and bring yourself back up to your standing start position. So stay standing for me. Take that towel out from between your knees. So what we want to do now is do a toe touch retest. So we want to see if there is anything different. So standing in that start position for me, feet together again, roll yourself down into that toe touch test that we did at the beginning. And we want to see if it feels easier or if you go any deeper into that toe touch than you did at the beginning. And then bring yourself back up to standing, and you can sit yourself down for a little second. I can't right now when I'm on my slides see your chat, your little chats, but I'm in the chat box because it'd be really interesting to see afterwards. If you want to type in there a yes or a no for me, so yes as to whether you felt it was a little bit easier or whether you went further into that toe touch after doing those 6 repetitions of that exercise. It'd be really cool to see whether that made any change to you. So if you'd like to write that in the chat, that would be really great. But what you can see is in these photographs of Luke, just after those 6 repetitions that he did, how much deeper he is in that toe touch test. So his mobility and his range of motion has improved. So he's moving with more efficiency in this movement pattern. So as you can see in that video, he's in the shearing shed, and you can imagine how much difference that's going to make to him to be that much closer to his toes when he's shearing. And his movement efficiency and his blow range is going to be so much better from having that capability. And that's just from doing 6 different, 6 repetitions of that exercise. Fantastic. So I can see some of the little messages there. And most of you, it was a lot easier. Like everything in life, not every exercise is going to suit every individual. Other people have some more things going on, and there might be something that's restricting their movement in other areas. But just remembering that the movement snacks we're showing you today are movement snacks that help most people in most walks of life. But of course, some people, it's not going to be the perfect exercise for them because everybody's an individual. And that's why we do that warrant of movement that Callum was asking me about last week, when we try to understand each individual's movement a little bit more. But it's good to see that for most of you, that made a really good change. And it's so simple to be incorporating into your day. There we go. Okay, so the toe touch progression is a very simple movement snack. And the reason we do it is it helps to improve our mobility when we're touching our toes. And it also improves our sensory awareness for both deep squatting and for hip hinging. So hip hinging is like a deadlift movement. So basically what happens is performing this toe touch progression exercise simply gives the brain permission to subconsciously adopt a more efficient movement pattern. And the reason I think this is so important for anybody working on farms is that squatting and hip hinging are movements that farmers need to use throughout their day. So, the video you're watching is kind of a standard life in the sheep and beef farmer in New Zealand in the morning. So you can see how many multiple times this movement pattern is likely to be used by farmers every day. These squatting and deadlift movement patterns, and they're not only performed repeatedly, they're also performed with considerable load. So it's really important that farmers perform these movement patterns with effectiveness and with efficiency in order to reduce the strain they put upon their body. So simple daily movement snacks, such as the toe touch progression, can help you to look after the tool of your trade, helping you to maintain mobility and good movement patterns and help keeping you moving well and fit for purpose, to help you manage your injury risk and increase your practical performance. So I've just skipped past that little slide because it was an extra question there about when we might be able to incorporate movement snacks into our day, but I'm just looking at the time and we started a little bit late. So if it's all right, I'll just skip forward for that slide because it was just us working out when we can do it in daily life. So another really important factor that supports our ability to move well is having good posture. So we need to be able to keep good position and alignment throughout movements if we're to be able to move well. So posture refers to the body's alignment and positioning under the ever-present force of gravity. So whether we're standing, sitting, or lying down, gravity is, of course, exerting a force upon our bodies. So good posture results in us having the ability to distribute the force of gravity through our body so that no one structure is overstressed. And this helps contribute to us performing in the most efficient manner. Whereas poor posture causes the body to be suboptimally aligned, which causes extra forces and stress to be imposed upon the body. And this, of course, can reduce our performance, and over time, it can lead to wear, tear, and pain. But it is really important when we're discussing posture to acknowledge that it is an ever-changing thing dependent upon the task that you need to perform. So we so often think of posture just as a static thing, but posture is actually how we are aligned, not only when we're in a static position, but also when we're dynamic. So posture is a very, very dynamic thing as well. And when we're moving well, we perform using good dynamic postural alignment. And when we have good posture, the muscles surrounding the spine are balanced and they're supporting the body equally so that it can help support us to have good structural alignment. So sitting, standing, and moving with proper postural alignment will allow you to work more efficiently with less fatigue and less strain upon your body. And of course, awareness is really the key thing for this. So we need to be aware of our posture, and it's key for us in regards to being aware of the physical stresses we're placing upon our body. So if we can maintain a good postural alignment whilst in a position or through movement patterns, we will be reducing the amount of stress we're placing upon our physical body. So the sitting position is the most obvious in which we can't succumb to that poor postural alignment. And it's especially true when we're driving a vehicle, such as a ute or a tractor or on the four-wheeler. Because, you know, we focus on the task that we're doing, or actually we spend the time focusing on all of the other things that we still need to be doing during our day. And we tend to slouch through our lower back, round the shoulders and protrude the head forward, as you can see in these pictures. And when this occurs, the weight of the head and the upper body is no longer balanced over the spine in its optimal alignment. So as we said, this poor posture increases the stress and strain placed upon the tissues of the body. And over time, this leads to muscular fatigue and eventually aches and pains. So we need to develop awareness of our posture and know what a good seated postural alignment looks and feels like. So the pelvis can be described as the seat of the spine. And it is this position of the pelvis that we need to be looking for. So in this neutral pelvis position, the hip bones and the pubic bones are in alignment. So they're in line and level with each other, the hip bones and the pubic bone. And the right and left hip bones are also in alignment and level with each other. So a really nice and easy way to check this, because, you know, that seems like, well, it's just a theory, how do I know that? Is to have this little triangle with your hands. So if you want to stand yourselves up for me, and you're going to take your hands into a triangle. So your index fingers are going to touch and your thumbs are going to touch. Apologies that mine don't, because I only have half a thumb, a little farm accident. So make yourself a triangle rather than a holy triangle. Index fingers touching and thumbs touching. And you're going to place those onto your pelvis. So the heels of your hands are going to be on the bony points on the front of the pelvis, and the index fingers are going to be on the pubic bone. So the triangle should be flat and level if you're in a neutral position. So if you slouch, what you'll feel is that that bottom of that triangle will start tilting forwards. So the fingers will be in front of the thumbs. If you go the other way and you overarch your back, stand up really tall and overarch that back, then the top of the triangle, so your thumbs, will be in front of your fingers. So what we want to do is come back to the center position. So neutral pelvis is where the triangle of the fingers and the thumbs will be flat and level. So you sit yourself down, and we'll just discuss a little bit more theory, and then we'll put this into practice for when we're seated. So neutral spine is facilitated by finding neutral pelvis. So when the pelvis is in a neutral position, it allows the spine to be aligned with its natural curves and to create the best amount of space between each spinal vertebrae. So neutral spine is the position of the spine where all three curves, like you've got in this picture, your neck, your middle back, and your lower back, are in their natural, well-aligned position. So neutral spine is the position in which the core functions at its most optimally. And this is why having awareness of how to find that neutral spine is so important when we're training the core or performing physical tasks when we need the core to function optimally for us. So neutral spine position naturally fires up those deep core muscles, whereas incorrect posture inhibits the correct function of these muscles. So it's key to know, though, that we don't want to have any one fixed posture. You know, we don't want to walk around and really sort of fix posture every day. Variation is good. We do need to keep our spines moving, and in many activities, we do require spinal movement. But having an awareness of that neutral pelvis and neutral spine position is a good idea, because this is going to help us to learn how to adjust our pelvis and our spine positions throughout the day when we feel ourselves drifting into that poor posture. It's going to help us bring ourselves back. And it's also going to help us to utilize that neutral spine position when we're doing tasks under load, we're lifting or we're carrying or we're pushing or we're pulling. So we want to have an awareness of good postural alignment to help us reduce the load, the strain, and the stress we're placing upon our bodies. So we want to aim for good postural alignment, but allow for variation. So posture hacks is my version of these little simple exercises that we can now incorporate into your day for your posture as well as for your movement. So this is our last little exercise of the webinar, and this is our posture hack to find our seated position. So this is so useful for those of you who are sitting in tractors or utes or on your quad or anything like that, you know. So it's going to help you find that neutral spine and help you find that neutral position. So sitting on your dining room table chair for me, I want you to have your feet flat on the floor, so you may need to shuffle forward. You're going to relax your body, your shoulders, your neck, and your jaw. And you're going to exhale and roll onto the back of your sit bones. So roll your pelvis backwards so you sit on the back of your sit bones, so your pelvis tucks under. So it's like you're shining your tailbone forwards on that seat. You'll notice that you slouch and you get shorter in height. Your shoulders will round forwards and your head will drop forwards. Breathe in for me. And you're going to roll over your sit bones towards your pubic bone on that seat into a pelvic tilt. So you're now shining your tailbone backwards, and your lower back will have a significant arch in it, and your belly may pop out the front. So if you roll backwards and forwards between these two positions for me, so you're sending your tailbone forwards, rolling onto the back of your sit bones, rolling over the bottom of your pelvis onto your pubic bone, and sending your tailbone backwards, rolling between these two positions. So you're imagining like the base of your pelvis is like a rocking horse, and you're rolling across the base of your pelvis like you are a rocking horse. Then we're going to try to find the position midway between that pelvic tuck and tilt. And this is our neutral pelvis position. And that neutral pelvis position, as we talked about, facilitates neutral spine. So when you find that neutral pelvis, you'll find that you'll be naturally nice and tall. And this position should seem relatively easy to be in. So if I roll backwards, you'll see I slouch. I roll my pelvis forwards like a rocking horse. And then when my sit bones are pointing straight down, I'm naturally nice and tall. So I've got that neutral pelvis, neutral spine, and I come into a good postural alignment. So that is a very simple and easy movement snack. But of course, we want to test even more that we've got that nice postural alignment correct. And that's where our little triangle hands are going to come back in. So you will want to check that you do have neutral because you're doing this by yourself. So create that triangle, heels of the hand onto your hip bones, index fingers touching on your pubic bone, and thumbs touching on the base of your belly. As you drop your pelvis back into that pelvic tuck, tailbone forward, you'll see your index fingers come in front of your thumbs. Roll over your pelvis onto your pubic bone, tailbone backwards. You'll see your thumbs come in front of your index fingers. Now roll yourself back to where you think your sit bones are straight downwards and you're in that neutral pelvis, neutral spine position. And those thumbs and fingers and heels of the hand should have a nice flat alignment. They should be in line and in position. This should be your neutral pelvis, facilitating your neutral spine with good postural alignment. So yeah, this just to wrap it up. Sorry, I'm a little bit over time. Lots to say in that webinar. But having the knowledge of how to perform movement snacks and posture hacks within your working day can really help you to move well as a rural athlete. And hopefully those are some nice, simple exercises with a bit of theory for you to help you incorporate into your working day out on the farm. So yeah, thank you so very much for having me, and thank you very much, Callum, for inviting me back to Scotland.
Thank you very much, Laura, and don't apologise for running over. It has been extremely useful and
wonderful.
Loads of some brilliant exercises, really basic exercises actually that we can all do. We do have, I know that we've run over, a little bit over, but hopefully no one is rushing away. We do have some time for questions. So
I've just seen Farina's comment. Can I comment on Farina's little comment in there?
Yes, please.
So most people found it, I'm just looking at the chats, most people sort of found that exercise a lot easier with the toe touch progression. Sheila, your hip flexors are still feeling sore, so that probably means that that's not the movement snack for you. As I said, every person is individual. This is one of those movement snacks that's going to help a vast proportion of people, but you know, every person's an individual. And Farina, if it was painful, I would 100% recommend you go to see a physio or a chiropractor or osteopath who can help you with that, because bending down to touch your toes shouldn't be painful. So we can use that as a little bit of awareness for you to know that that might be the time to go and get somebody to look at that and just see what's going on, so that you can then start to incorporate those exercises that will help you.
Cool. Thank you, Laura. Does anyone have any questions?
So the slide I skipped through just because I knew I was running out a little bit of time and I could sort of add it in at the end if people were interested, was just about when we can think about incorporating these into our day. So, you know, it's ideas like, you know, if you're milking cows, when the cows are coming into the shed or when the cows are going out of the shed, in all of the dairy farmers that I work with, that's when they do their movement snacks, you know, because they're down in the pit, cows are coming in and out, they're just standing there. So you may as well do an exercise. You know, our sheep farmers, when the dogs are working, that's a great time. When your kettle's boiling, may as well do a movement snack. Obviously, we talked about when you're driving, brilliant time to be doing your seated postural alignment and to be doing your breathing. You know, use traffic lights as a good reminder. a lot of farmers here, I'll get them to put a dot of raddle onto their tractor steering wheel or their quad bike steering wheel. So when they look at that raddle, it reminds them to use that posture hack. And I think in the video webinar last week, you had pictures of myself and my partner doing our movement snacks when we're rearing calves, and when the calves are on the milker out in the paddock. That's another 5 minutes that we can be doing it in our day. So every person's an individual, and every day for everybody is completely different. But there's always times during our day that we're not moving, but we could incorporate movement into that time.
I've got one question, Laura, actually, if you don't mind. It relates to the breathing exercises that you were going through. Are there any apps, like smartphone apps, that you would recommend for mindfulness or for breathing exercises? Is there anything like that we could download and use?
I have to say, I'm going to say I don't know the answer to that one. I actually don't know. And I think probably the reason I don't know is that I think I've started to just incorporate my breathing into my days just by finding those certain times, like, morning and evening. I'm probably an active relaxer for my mindfulness. But I know that a lot of people do find them useful. So that's something I need to go and research, isn't it? But the other time that I do that type of thing is I've started recently doing a 5-minute journal in the morning, which is a 5-minute gratitude journal. And that's, for me, that's a really good time for me to be doing my breathing exercises, because that's kind of my mindfulness that I do every day is a 5-minute journal in the morning and before I go to bed. But you've stimulated me to find out the answer to your question and find some apps for people.
Don't worry about it. I mean, I just, it's something that I've tried, but you know what it's like when you start doing exercises, breathe in for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, breathe out. It's difficult to stick with it. You need something physical to like watch or just keep on track. But maybe that's just me. I don't know.
I think it depends how long you want to do it for as well. Remember, we only need 10 to 20 breaths to have a good positive effect. And then you've reminded your nervous system of how you should be breathing. If you want to have it as a full focus practice, then absolutely. I think some people enjoy a full focus breath practice. Other people enjoy incorporating it little by little by little by little during your working day or during your everyday life. I think that's probably what I do personally, because I find it easier to just constantly little bit here and little bit there, remind my body to be doing it. And then I suppose that's just finding the times in your day that it works to do it. Yeah.
I'm conscious of time.
Yes.
I was just something that popped into my mind, Laura, as we were going, was around your Facebook page, because I know that you've got a lot of videos of other movement hacks, posture, everything we've kind of covered tonight. Remind us all, what's your Facebook page and how can we get a hold of the videos?
So yes, they are on my Facebook page. I do have to apologize. I haven't done a lot recently because I've been a little bit full on with incorporating all of this stuff, as I said, into the shearing industry education. But I do still have a lot on there from lockdown. So if you go onto my Facebook page, so it's Rural Works is my Facebook page. And I'm just finding the little taggy thing because I'm not very technical on social media. It's at Rural Works NZ, so RURALWORKS NZ, so at Rural Works NZ. So I'll type that in, shall I? Works NZ. And if you go onto that Facebook page, there's a lot of videos called Good Yarns of me interviewing people during the last lockdown in New Zealand. I'm talking about their pathway into their jobs. But there's also a lot of videos of me doing some back-to-back movement snacks, talking you through them, and some posture hacks as well, as you say, Callum.
Yeah. Excellent. So yeah, check it out. Rural Works New Zealand, or NZ, on Facebook. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, that kind of brings us to the end.